Hi there. We're going to do a couple examples on distance and midpoint formula, and these are kind of confusing. So I would highly suggest every time you do this, making this x1, y1, x2, y2, and just labeling that. That way you're not going to get this mixed up. But what we're going to have to do is use these two green formulas here to find the distance and the midpoint. All right. So I'm going to start this, and I'm not stopping. So we're going to make a giant bracket, and inside that bracket we're going to put x2 minus x1. So that's 7 square root of 2 minus 3 square root of 2 squared. I'm just going to fill it all out first. And then y2 minus y1. So that would be negative 1 minus negative 5. So I'm going to make that a tilted plus sign, showing that I put a double negative together and square that. All right. Next, going to combine this. Now, you treat 7 radical 2 as like 7x. So 7 radical 2 minus 3 radical 2 is simply 4 radical 2. So that would be 4 radical 2 quantity squared plus 4 squared. So that's going to be 16 right there, 4 squared. And over here, this is going to be, you know, if you're like, how do I do that? Then 4 radical 2 squared is 4 squared plus that squared. So that's 16 times, because there's a times there. Radical 2 squared is radical 2 times radical 2, which is 2. And that's 32. So this is 32 plus 16. All right, so that turns into the square root of 48, which breaks down into factor trees. So 48 would be 8 times 6. Remember, an 8 is 2 times 2 times 2, and 6 is 2 times 3. We take a pair of 2's and a pair of 2's. Each of those pop out, which is 2 times 2, which is 4 radical 3. So that should have been the distance. Now, for midpoint, I'll do that in an orangey color here. We're going to do the midpoint. And we're going to do x1 plus x2 over 2, which is 3 radical 2 plus 7 radical 2 over 2, comma, y1 plus y2 over 2. That would be, let's see here, negative 5 plus negative 1 all over 2. Making sure I don't goof a negative sign up. So that becomes 10 radical 2 all over 2, which will simplify. And this is negative 6 over 2, which will simplify. And that'll turn into negative 3 over here. And then that cancels, 1 and 5. So that's 5 radical 2, negative 3 for the midpoint. That's the midpoint. And this is the distance here. So those two answers. That was quite involved there. It's not the easiest problem in the world. Now let's do another one. Same sort of thing here, except we got different sets of points, different types of things. Just some bright yellow for the distance. So we're just hammering this out here. This is x2. No, it isn't. It's x1, y1, and x2, y2. Definitely I would do that every time. So x2. Now, here's the trick to this. Here's our big parentheses. So we have x2 in parentheses minus x1. Notice I put that in parentheses right there. Okay, and then that all gets squared. Because the trick here is this negative sign is going to change that sign in front of that r. I'll get back to that in a minute. Over here we got y2 minus y1, which is s minus s. That's really nice because that's going to be 0. S minus s is 0. 0 squared is 0. But over here, this is the problem. This is going to turn into, still all under a radical symbol, that's going to turn into r minus 2 minus 6 minus r, because you have to distribute that like negative 1 through there. And that's how you would do something like that. All right, so you would simplify that. So this is, that would become r minus 2. Well, let's go ahead and simplify, though. So that would be, the r's would cancel. That r and that minus r, that would go away. And this would be negative 8 quantity squared, which is the square root of 64, which turns into 8. So our distance between those two things right there is 8. How about that? And then the midpoint, for those formulas, white. Never use white. X1 plus X2 over 2. So we have X1 plus, it's a good idea, good to be safe here, putting these in parentheses, r minus 2, and those aren't squared or anything, that's just X1 plus X2, all over 2, comma, Y1 plus Y2. So that's S plus S over 2. Now we just simplify this mess. So on the top of this first one, we have 6, and I'll write it without the parentheses. Why not? 6 plus R minus 2. And on this side, what do I have? Quick. 2S over 2. And make sure you make your S's like an S, because they'll turn into 5s. Mine always do. Those twos right there will cancel, leaving me just S on that side. Now let's simplify it on this. This will be 2R plus what? 4. Good. So plus 4 over 2. And then you have a common factor here of 2 on each one. So you can do this trick. You can go boom, 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 and cancel each of these by 2. So that becomes a 1 there, a 1 there, and a 2 there. So that's R plus 2, comma S, which should have been the answer I read to you. That is the midpoint. The midpoint. And this is our distance right here. All right, so there you go. I did that really fast. Probably want to go back and check that out. Again, have a good one.